This project rocks. Trinity Urban Permaculture principle number 6. Always use free local resources first. Huge problem. I need plants. I need nature to stay healthy and happy. But I live in an apartment in town where there is no land. Fortunately, I have a nice neighbor who owns an Italian restaurant right behind where I live. And he said, "Hey, Trinity, feel free. Put your garden in the empty places of my parking lot." I said, "This is great. Thank you so much. Let's give it a try." I knew I would have to come up with some sort of raised beds that were really strong. They'd have to hold up to people walking over top of them and maybe even cars bumping into them once in a while. And then I got the following idea. I knew I had to keep it strong and cheap. The idea was, what about tires? There's an auto body shop across the street and they get rid of a lot of tires and it costs them. So I went and I asked, can I use some of these tires for my garden? They said, go right ahead. And that's what I did. First step in any successful garden is to level the base. That way, water's not draining off. It's staying where it should be. Now, with the tires, same thing is true. Now, this parking lot sloped a little bit, so I had to level each one of these base tires, and that would allow the water to percolate down and then remain in the bottom rim as a moisture sink. Once that base tire is leveled, the next thing we do is fill the bottom of the tire with lots of absorbent cardboard. I took this right from the recycling from the restaurant, so again, we still have not spent a single cent. Now it's time to Lasagna the Tire. This is where we put a series of layers that will feed the plant's root system. We're going to use all different kinds of neat, nutritious stuff. The most important thing we've got to consider is water. How are we going to keep water in this tire bed long enough that these plants will be able to thrive between rainfalls? Made sure to fill the bottom tire rim with lots of absorbent material that I got from the restaurant's recycle bin. Cardboard and packaging material, as you can see here. I had to make sure that the bottom layer and that bottom rim was completely filled with moisture. So I put several buckets of water in it and I waited until all the cardboard and packaging material was completely saturated. Next step is to seal that bottom hole, the big hole at the very bottom of the tire. We want to seal it naturally as best we can. One of the best things that nature uses to plug holes is clay. Again, I'm trying to spend no money on this deal. I'm trying to maximize principle 6, okay? Use local free materials. You're going to love where I got the clay. Now, in our town, when the electric company comes and puts in a new electricity pole, when one needs to be put in or an old one's dying, they use these big augers and they go down, I don't know, at least 4 or 5 feet and into the clay bedrock, into the subsoil and blah, 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 blah. They bring it back up, they shake the auger, and they leave it sit there. So I go and I load my truck up with 5-gallon buckets, and whenever I see one of those around town, I just go fill my buckets, put a lid on them, and then just keep it for mixing with garden soil or sealing the bottom of these beds. It's wonderful to have local native clay that you can use in your garden. Now on top of this mucky, muddy clay, we put a nice little absorbent layer of free mulch. I can go to my local recycle center and get as many 5-gallon buckets as I want, as long as I go in the spring when they have it for free. People take their shrubbery clippings and small trees and so forth, and the recycle center shreds it and turns it into mulch, free resource for everybody in our town. Next comes the nutritious layer of raw compost. This is gathered in my apartment, and it's just food scraps for the most part, and shredded paper, a little bit of cardboard, anything that will degrade and go back to nature. The compost that you see here was the leftover apple parts from making my apple cider vinegar this year. That stuff really composts great. I mix it with shredded paper, and you can see here we've spread it all out evenly. The next layer is also nutritious. It is finished compost from our recycle center. We can go there every spring and get nice black compost. We fill it in our 5-gallon buckets and put it in our trucks and our cars and go home and use it as amendment for our gardens. So it's a wonderful free resource. But unfortunately, I left a lid off a couple of my buckets, and they did get some rainwater. So this is kind of slurpy compost. Okay, next we need a dry layer to put on the soupy, slurpy compost. And lo and behold, we haven't spent any money yet, and look at all this resource. All these little branches and twigs and leaves were just laying in the parking lot. So I helped myself to them, and I created a nice little carbon barrier, and look how clean the parking lot looks now. I love, 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 love it. Okay, now it's time for the last layer. I have a tire that's been in use for about 3 years, and I need to move it. So I'm going to take some of the soil from it and put it on the top of this new tire. When you do that, you want to really be careful and get as much as possible underneath the top rim. You have to kind of pick up that rim and scooch it in there. Some people kick, some people use hammers, spades, their fists, whatever you need to do to get that soil packed real well into the rim and the top bed. All right, right now, if we were just going to do a single tire bed without another layer, we would go ahead and we would use our blade and cut this rim off. That will give us the maximum amount of growing space. However, I'm going to be planting bamboo in this tire, and I want a nice root system to develop, so I'm going to add another tire. Now, I still want water to be able to percolate down into the bottom tire, so I need to create some slats. I'm going to use a utility blade with a brand new knife, and believe it or not, I will be able to cut through steel-belted radial tires. Okay, now it's time to load up this bottom layer tire with as much rainwater as we can safely get in. It'll absorb, all the different layers will absorb, the nutrients will mix together, and it's going to stay moist. Now, this video was taken in the middle of December in Zone 6. So we had a rare warm day that I could get out and do this. It will freeze and then thaw again in the spring. We are going to put a second layer on this. Okay, as I just said, am going to put a second layer on. So when I get the second tire, I'm going to have to remember to cut slits or openings in the tire on the top that are directly above these holes that we see in the base layer. That way, anything that we water the top tire with will eventually percolate its way down into the base tire. All right? And moisture is so important. So these slits are essential. Then at the end, when you've got everything cut, I recommend you use some strong zip ties to put, or some wire or some light chain, anything at all, to secure these two tires together at those openings in their base rims. All right, that way if a car's bumper would happen to nudge that top tire, it won't push it off of the bottom layer. And finally, the last thing you want to do is cut the top rim completely off so that you have maximum growing space for your plants in the spring.